Well, for those of you who have been living under a rock, or even better, for those of you who have canceled your Disney Plus subscriptions like a good little consumer, the Ahsoka show premiered yesterday with the first 2 episodes being available on Disney Plus. And, I'm going to go ahead and give you my thoughts on those first 2 episodes, speaking as somebody who, believe it or not, believes that not all Disney Star Wars has been awful. I mean, 99.9% of it has, but there has been some good stuff. Also speaking as somebody with, Ahsoka is one of my favorite characters, in fact, in my top 5 favorite. So how do you think I enjoyed the show? Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and let's just get this over with. I'm just gonna let all of you guys know right now, it is very difficult to record this review. It is about 1:30 a.m. my time as of recording this, and I finished the show at about 11:30 p.m. It took me 2 hours to muster up the courage and the strength to even get in front of this camera because I was just locked to my couch in deep meditation wondering, why? Do I have to? This is a prison. I wasn't even going to watch the show to content farm. I genuinely am a fan of Ahsoka. She is in my top 5 favorite Star Wars characters, and I wanted to give it a fair shake. Did I have high hopes? Oh my god, no, not at all. No high hopes in the slightest, but I did want to give it a fair shake, and, yeah, even the opening crawl is phoned in. It is the equivalent of using Comic Sans in a college entrance paper. It is so uninspiringly lackluster. It is almost laughable. The first opening moments of the show truly kick into gear in your mind how abysmal this experience is going to be. It does not have the traditional Star Wars music. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just say what I want to about the score of the show right now. The score is fantastic. If this were a Middle-earth, Lord of the Rings film or some sort of European fantasy, this is not Star Wars, not just in the opening, but throughout the entirety of the first 2 episodes. This music doesn't sound like Star Wars music. It sounds like Lord of the Rings or Dungeons and Dragons music. It is mind-blowing how out of touch the music is and how it does not correlate to anything Star Wars related. So much so, I wasn't even going to bring this up till later, but we're already talking about music. I'm just going to go ahead and free flow this. There is a scene in the first episode where Sabine Wren, because yes, if you guys don't realize, the show is called Ahsoka, but it's basically another season of Star Wars Rebels. That's really what it is, live-action Star Wars Rebels. It very, very little to do with Ahsoka so far, despite it being named after her. But yes, Sabine Wren, for anyone that cared to watch Rebels, why you would, I have no idea, has returned, and she's being her normal, completely just irresponsible, annoying, and grating self, and she's on this speeder bike, and she's speeding away from the city, and it is playing girl boss rock and roll music. Do you guys remember that scene in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek where they use Sabotage by Beastie Boys while young James T. Kirk is fleeing from the law? You're getting those vibes, but in Star Wars. It is so astoundingly out of touch. Whoever directed this episode, maybe even made this whole show, wrote the scene, however it works, I don't think they've ever seen a single Star Wars movie, read a single Star Wars comic, played a Star Wars game, any of that. I think they truly didn't know they were writing for Star Wars. Their only experience with Star Wars was J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, and they didn't realize that's a completely separate IP in general.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
However, I'm getting ahead of myself. The episode opens up with a ship needing to get clearance to enter a new rebel transport, some sort of rebel capital ship, and not even rebels anymore. Sorry, this is the New Republic. It takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So a New Republic capital ship, and it uses the cliche, that's an older code. It checks out sort of reference. And when the individuals board the ship, turns out they're not Jedi at all. By the way, this is going to be a very spoiler-heavy review because yeah, you're not going to care about the show. If you're watching me and you haven't watched the show, trust me, you are not going to give a damn that I'm giving you spoilers. So, they are not Jedi on the ship. They are, I guess, Sith. It doesn't actually say what they are, but some sort of dark side force user. And they make the first opening 10 minutes try really, really hard to feel like the opening scene from A New Hope. You guys remember how cool it was when you were very first introduced to the Star Wars universe in A New Hope? Let's do all that again, but with none of the gravitas or emotion. And, they even, maybe they're going for an attempt to be like the Rogue One Darth Vader hallway scene, which is still, that's pretty cool. That's one of the things Disney gave us that's good, right? So let's just copy that. Let's do that again. Only exponentially worse and more boring in every conceivable way. It's almost an art form how uninspired the first 10 to 15 minutes of this episode is. and then it goes on for another 50-ish minutes. This is about a 1 hour long first episode and a 45-minute second episode, so effectively an hour and a half of your life, give or take. And it is, I had a buddy watch it with me because I was not willing to, go this alone. I needed the strength of another, patriot right there next to me. And 15 minutes in, he was on his phone the whole time, and after the first episode, I went to turn on the second. He thought the first episode was still going. We're about 20 minutes into the second episode, and he's like, how much longer do we have in the first hour of this first episode? Like, he was so checked out. He didn't see end credits. He didn't see me queue up the next episode. It was abysmal. He stopped maybe twice to ask me generic Star Wars questions about the TV shows that had come before this, because like an intelligent human being, he has not been paying attention to Disney Star Wars, and I truly do envy the blissful ignorance that this man has. It made your boy a bit jealous, but I digress. Let's continue. So, these Sith, they kill everybody on board, and then they release Morgan Elsbeth. And you guys might be wondering, who's Morgan Elsbeth? Why does that name sound familiar? Or maybe it doesn't sound familiar to you at all, which would be fine. She was in The Mandalorian. You remember the single Ahsoka episode in Mandalorian Season 2 where, Ahsoka's fighting against that chick with the Beskar spear, and she gets captured at the end, with the help of Mando? That's Morgan Elsbeth. They bring her back in this. In fact, she seems to, so far, be the main antagonist. Now, maybe Grand Admiral Thrawn will come later, but he does not make an appearance in the first couple episodes. He's only there in name. They name drop him a few times, but she's, so far, the main antagonist, and I'm gonna be honest, if you guys didn't pay attention to Mandalorian Season 2, again, like good television consumers or viewers, then you're not gonna know who this girl is or what her relevance is. She's in one episode of an incredibly overrated show that came out a million years ago by content standards, but they just expect you to remember her. No flashback, no sort of like, hey, do you remember this character? Not even any sort of line delivery for people that may or may not have, or that may not have seen the Mandalorian Season 2 episode. Maybe this is their first experience with the Star Wars TV universe. They don't even acknowledge really who she was prior to this or why she has some sort of importance. They just expect you to remember. Like, can you imagine if years upon years later, after you guys remember the Hulk movie from like 2008 or whatever, and the bad guy was Tim Roth, Abomination. All these years later, they brought him back in Shang-Chi, and it was a throwaway joke, and no one really remembered that character unless you know your deep-cut Marvel lore. Imagine they did that with Star Wars, but they actually tried to make that character, Abomination, a central figure without reminding you that, oh, right, the Ed Norton Hulk movie does exist. That is what this TV show does. That's what this first episode does. And, I gotta, I guess, admire the balls Disney has to think that people actually care that much about this version of the Star Wars television universe.
You have balls. I like balls.
But if you don't remember the character of Morgan Elsbeth, that's totally fine. You don't need to remember her. In fact, you don't even need to remember that you're watching Star Wars, because the very next scene shows, Ahsoka doing something interesting on a desert planet, and it also forgets about the character. In fact, it forgets it is a Star Wars show entirely, and tries to make you think you're watching Indiana Jones with, Ahsoka going on this Indiana Jones-esque archaeological expedition, complete with, like, traps where you have to match up lights to get an artifact that you pull from a chamber. It felt like watching Star Wars trying to be Indiana Jones. Ahsoka doing her best Harrison Ford cosplay. It was mesmerizing. It didn't fit the tone of what had come previously in the show, in the first 15 or so minutes. Not only did it not fit the tone of what the show had set up thus far, but it doesn't fit the tone of Star Wars in the slightest. Now, I get it, Star Wars is at artifacts and ancient Sith stuff and Jedi stuff all the time, but it's never been shot like it wants to be an Indiana Jones film, and it's never done, like, booby traps, and it was just strange. Like, there was literally no reason for this to be in a Star Wars program, aside from, I think they are genuinely trying to reference Indiana Jones. And if that's not what they're trying to do, then they're just ripping off far better material and doing it in the most ineffective way possible. I was actually interested in the show at this point, because it was so maddening that that's what they were going for. I sat upright and was like, is this intentionally an Indiana Jones reference? To this day, I don't know. Like by the time you're watching this, it's probably been 12 hours since I've watched the episode, and I'm still wondering, was that an intentional Indiana Jones reference? And I don't think they will ever tell us.
Alright then, keep your secrets.
But basically, Ahsoka gets this artifact that turns out to be a map to where Grand Admiral Thrawn is hiding out. She can't decipher it though, so she goes to Harrison Dula, who again, if you don't remember, is the Twi'lek from the Rebels show, the green Twi'lek who's married to Kanan Jarrus, or whatever his name was. And she's like, hey, I can't read this either. Maybe go to Sabine Wren. That's where Sabine comes into the picture. And Ahsoka, being the bland plank of wood, just like every other character so far, is like, I don't know if I want to go see her or if she'll want to see me. And, Harrison Dula, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, the individual that Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ewan McGregor, cheated on his wife with to go be with, just in case you guys weren't aware, had forgotten about that. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, the wannabe Twi'lek, tells, yeah, go see her anyway. Because that's how the acting is in this entire show. 2 episodes, no one showed emotion at all. Like, both episodes, there is not a hint of emotion. It is baffling what direction the directors must have been giving, or in this case, not giving the actors. But basically, Ahsoka decides to say, alright, I'll go find Sabine.
Stop, don't come back.
And that's when we get the speeder bike thing I was telling you about to kind of introduce us to the cool punk rock Mandalorian Jedi chick, Sabine Wren. And basically, it's a lot of nothing. Like, the show is just so much talking, so much reintroducing characters, which I understand needing to reintroduce characters if you haven't seen them in a while, but it does it in the most exposition-heavy way, and also, these are characters that nobody truly cares about. I mean, again, we care about Ahsoka, but she's like got 12 lines, maybe the whole show. They're trying for the strong, silent archetype, which there's never been Ahsoka. She's always been more the witty, charismatic, Spider-Man-esque character. And I get it, she's older now, times have changed, she's grown. But you've got to bridge that gap somewhere, because it doesn't feel like the character of Ahsoka at all. It looks like an older Ahsoka. Visually, it's not bad. It's weird seeing her in live action, but I mean, no weirder than we saw her in Mandalorian or anything to that effect. It's just, I don't know if it's something I'll ever get used to, being a Clone Wars era Ahsoka fan, and maybe it'll grow on me, who knows. Point is, she does look Ahsoka enough, but she does not act like Ahsoka whatsoever. She also holds the lightsabers wrong. I don't remember if she held them wrong in Mandalorian or not, but yeah, she doesn't hold them in her proper fighting style stance. Maybe that's just a super nitpicky Star Wars nerd thing, but maybe it's worth mentioning. Anyway, Sabine and Ahsoka, they get onto each other. They have an argument. Sabine steals the artifact and tries to figure it out without Ahsoka's help. The bad guys break in, and a lightsaber fight between Sabine and a Sith apprentice, I guess, breaks out. And Sabine gets ran through. She gets stabbed. Just boom. And I would have loved this. I would have loved seeing a sacrifice like this, or a good guy lose and really set up some stakes. But because it's Disney Star Wars, I know that's not going to happen, because they will not dare kill off a female character. Definitely not the strong female character. And wouldn't you know it, the show ends on a cliffhanger. Does she survive? Is Sabine going to be yes, of course she's going to be A-okay. Reva, the bad guy female character, survived a lightsaber to the gut. Of course Sabine did. At this point, are lightsabers just toys? Do you get them in a package, a McDonald's Happy Meal? Do they mean nothing? Are they just glorified sticks at this point? How does Qui-Gon Jinn get stabbed with a lightsaber and die within minutes, but Sabine and Reva can survive being impaled by, again, lightsabers and just be totally A-okay and fine? And with both instances, no explanation. They cut to black, and, they make it, oh, is she dead? Is she alive? Next episode cues up, and she's up in a hospital bed. She's fine. Like, no explanation how she didn't die from being stabbed with a lightsaber. They're probably going to say, oh, it was her side. It wasn't a full-on impalement. Like, the cut or the stab wound is a bit above her ribs when it shows it, which, frankly, I can't believe, Disney Star Wars even dared show off some female midriff. But, they need to show where the wound was. And, yeah, maybe it was not technically where a fatal spot would be, but at the end of the day, they're doing this because they're not going to kill off female characters, and it's getting incredibly annoying. If Qui-Gon died to a lightsaber being, shoved through his meat suit, then Reva and Sabine should have died too. Or if you don't want them to die, that's fine. Don't have them be impaled by a lightsaber. You're cheapening what is supposed to be the ultimate weapon in the Star Wars fantasy mythos. Like, there's no getting around how useless they're making lightsabers look. And while we're on the whole, female thing, this show is nothing but strong female characters. And while obviously very many of us are tired of this trope, because they can do anything, they're girl bosses, or even if they're not a girl boss and fail, because Sabine does fail a few times in this first episode, she's not reprimanded for it, and she's an insufferable character. She's also just immediately good at doing things again. When the second episode comes, she wants to redeem herself. She never really gets told your actions or bad actions, except for Ahsoka, her former master, who tells her, I don't really want to work with you because of your actions, because you do things like this. But everyone else tells Ahsoka, go easy on her, you're being too hard on her. So there's this really weird conflict of, is Sabine awful or is she great? And Ahsoka's just a hard ass. But basically, at the end of the day, all the main characters in this are strong female characters. In fact, to the point where there are no male characters. Like there is a male Sith dude, and then a droid with a male voice, if you want to count that. But the male Sith guy, he's really just a tertiary character at this point. He's doing the bidding of Morgan Elsbeth. So while he is a bad guy, he's not the bad guy in charge. So I guess props to Disney for not making the straight white man the main big bad guy. But no, he's an underling who uses a lightsaber, and every single other character, competent character, is a female. It's not even that there are incompetent male characters in this. They just seem to not exist, period, which is strange. It truly is a feminist wet dream when it comes to Star Wars, and I wasn't actually expecting that. I mean, I know it should have been, the Force is female, but I wasn't expecting it to be this overt. There's so many male characters that they could use, whether it be to team up, or if you don't want to use a male character, that's also fine. This is an Ahsoka show, first and foremost, but then at least give us more Ahsoka. Again, we barely get anything. It's more or less a Rebels continuation that Ahsoka happens to be in. They named it Ahsoka because she's the most, famous character. They want to bank on her name. Now, granted, it is only the first 2 episodes. That could change as it goes on. But as it currently stands, I'm baffled as to why they're calling this show Ahsoka.
Money!
But anyway, as we continue through the second episode, Ahsoka and Harrison Dula decide to go and try and figure out if Morgan Elsbeth still has any illegal dealings going on, if any of her shipping companies are still loyal to her, and while Sabine Wren is still healing in the hospital bed. And we get one interesting good line from a side character that gets arrested later on because turns out to be a turncoat bad guy. He says something along the lines of, my loyalty isn't to the Empire or to the New Republic. I'm a businessman. My loyalty is to my shareholders, which is like, all right, I can respect that. Like, yeah, that's fair. You're a businessman. But later on, he turns out to not be a businessman who's loyal to his shareholders. He's an Imperial sympathizer. So that line ended up being wasted. Awesome. A pointless fight scene occurs where Ahsoka is fighting off some, I assume, dude with a lightsaber. His face is completely covered, but the name was Mariko, so that sounds like a kind of male name, and I didn't see any titties. In a very, very uninspiring lightsaber fight. In fact, it's the lightsaber fight that we see in the trailer that my boy Atreus was nice enough to point out on Twitter how sluggish and slow with no impact it feels like, and he hit the nail on the head. It's not just for the trailer. When you watch it in real time, yeah, it is a very sluggish, slow, non-canonical, in my opinion, lightsaber fight because Ahsoka is not fighting like Ahsoka, whose entire style is supposed to be based around her agility and whatnot. And the fight ends with the main bad dude getting away on a ship. He's standing on the whatever they're called, the part of the ship that lowers the ramp. He's standing on the ramp of the ship, and the ship starts to fly away. And at this point, I was like, well, yeah, obviously they're not going to, kill the individual here. They've got to have more lightsaber fights later on. I wasn't thinking about it until my buddy goes, just force pull him off the ship because he's just standing in an open airlock. And I was like, all right, I guess, yeah, just force pull him off. Like, she's right there. They're like 10 feet from each other. Just use the force, especially since the Sith guy had thrown his lightsaber and it misses Ahsoka. And as he's flying away, he uses the force to force pull his lightsaber back to him. So obviously, the force pull is a thing. Why is Ahsoka just standing at this dude 10 feet away who's about to fly off and isn't just like, hey, get over here? Like, it makes no sense as to, I don't know, it's the direction that this show is taking. It's boring, it's awful, it's non-canonical. Like, you might ask, Leon, is there anything good about this show thus far? And, I mean, the droid Hu Yang has a couple of good lines. That's it. Normally I at least can give credit to the score, like The Mandalorian, good score. A lot of Disney, Rogue One, good score. Not John Williams. It was so reminiscent of traditional Star Wars. I thought Rogue One brought John Williams back. No, it didn't. Like, I can at least give Disney credit in the music department. I can't even give them that with this. This is not the most in-depth technical review because I'll be honest, I really didn't. I shouldn't say I didn't want to do this. I did. I want to talk about this show, but I don't know. I was hoping for more than this. I'm undecided if I'm going to keep watching this, if I'm going to do weekly reviews. Maybe I'll actually script them out if you guys would be interested in that. But I guess I just more wanted to vent than anything else because time is more valuable than money. And I don't know how much money Disney spent on this. It couldn't have been much. It looks incredibly cheap when you look at the costume design and set design. But time is definitely more valuable than money. And an hour and a half of my time was absolutely wasted, and so I think that's why I'm trying to do this video. I want to recoup some of that lost time, some of the value that it is that time, and maybe at least give you guys something that you can enjoy and latch on to, or give me some feedback on. And if I do continue to watch the show and review the show, I'll be doing it in a far more easy to digest style than me just jumping around random topic to random topic. I was at a loss with this, guys, and I for the life of me, I would not recommend this show. I would not wish this show on your absolute worst enemy. Like, if you guys are out there and being like, I'm tired of these trannies, trying to turn our kids gay and all that, I'd be like, me too, but showing the trannies, Ahsoka, the Star Wars show, that's too far. You got to give them a little bit of mercy. That's where I'm at with this. But I want to know your guys' thoughts. If you saw it, let me know in the comments down below, or let me know on Twitter, where you can find me at BoltTheWord. If you didn't see it, let me know, why you're not watching it, or if you're going to watch it, or basically anything else you want to talk about when it relates to Star Wars. Preferably, we could talk about the EU. That's where the good stuff is. But until then, this has been Leon Idle with Words of Paradise. I am a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day, usually 2 videos a day. But like I said, now that I'm about wrapping this up, I still have to edit. It's about 2 a.m. my time. No second video tomorrow. I don't have it in me. After the travesty that I just witnessed, that was Disney Star Wars, the Ahsoka show, I don't have it in me. So tomorrow's going to be a 1 video day, and we'll get back to 2 videos on Thursday. So until then, it's all here in the Nerdosphere, and this has been Words of Paradise.